Oh, it's a painting. This is of Columbia Gorge, going down the Columbia Gorge on a freight train. And the engine went into the tunnel. Just as it was going in the tunnel, turned the tunnel bright orange. Immediately I was doing a drawing, and I grabbed an orange crayon and scribbled orange, and then we were in the tunnel. But I've never seen that light turn the tunnel bright orange. So came back home and painted this painting after a trip from Spokane to make a movie. I brought a filmmaker along on the freight trains, and he made a movie about riding the rails. And I made this painting when I got home from that trip. But I love this painting of the Columbia Gorge. Hard to hold it up, but
So who's Red Pine, Steve, and why did you accompany him?
oh, he's a famous translator of Chinese literature into English.
He lives
Poetry,
here in town.
ancient poetry, and Buddhist manuscripts. I call him the Kumarajiva of America. Kumarajiva was a famous monk that brought the manuscripts from India to China 1,500 years ago or whenever. The huge manuscripts, and he was Kumarajiva is the name, and he brought all this material, and then they translated it in this monastery. I think they had 1,000 monks all translating it, the Indian manuscripts, into Chinese. Now Bill's doing the same thing for America. He's translating ancient Buddhist manuscripts in Chinese into English. In fact, he's finding and discovering things that have been lost for 2,000 years, like the Tao Te Ching. When we were there, they just unearthed an old tomb, an ancient tomb. Forget the name of the tomb. The Moguan Ti texts was a tomb they unearthed that hadn't. And the Tao Te Ching, you know, the Tao Te Ching, that Lao Tzu's ancient writings. They were some of the earliest manuscripts of his translation of the Tao Te Ching, and Bill, in those manuscripts, which he got copies of there in China, photocopies of silk, writings on silk and bamboo, I guess, and discovered things that had been lost or forgotten in the original Tao Te Ching. Like the dark of the moon, the way I understand it, the dark of the moon represents the before the beginning. The dark of the moon is before the new moon, first moon. And so the whole deal with the Tao is before the beginning. What is before the beginning of everything is the Tao. The Tao is before the beginning. Or you could say God was before the beginning. I mean, it's almost the same concept in a way about God and, God and the Tao are the same, I think the same from what I understand, or a similar way of seeing the universe. Whatever it was before the beginning was something before the beginning. Of course, they start with talk about the Big Bang, a pinpoint of everything in a dot. I don't get that really, but anyway, he discovered some things that had been forgotten, and he became controversial with the scholars. I understand. I'm not the horse's mouth, but the way I understand it, it's pretty interesting stuff.
And while you were there, you were seeking the elusive hermitages.
We were seeking the hermits of today, the living hermits of today.
They were supposed to be sort of extinct, and rumor had it that there were some hermits way up in the hills.
Yeah, in the Chongnan Mountains. That's a great story. When we went to China the first time, Bill went to the main Buddhist temple in Beijing, talked to the head abbot. I don't know his name. I can't speak Chinese, but he had a conference. We had a conference. We got to have tea and candy. They always have a little bowl of sweets, and they serve tea. And we sit down and have tea, and Bill asked him about hermits in China, and the head abbot said, "There's no hermits in China anymore. They're gone. They were made to go to the rice fields to work and forced to work." But he gave Bill a letter to go to the temples and look for her, to visit the various temples. They must open the doors for us, and this monk comes up and grabs Bill by the sleeve and says, "There's hermits in the Chongnan Mountains down by Xi'an." He tells him as we're leaving, after the main guy said there's no hermits, the same temple, this monk tells him there's hermits south down, 1,000 miles south in Xi'an, or I don't know how many miles, but.
And off you go.
And then off we went, zigzagging down through China on three-wheel cars and buses and taxis, looking for hermits. And he'd look with binoculars around, see if he could see smoke coming up in the mountains. And we went to temple after temple and ancient centers of Buddhism. It's like going to Jerusalem, to the main places where they used to live back, all these centuries. And we didn't find anybody except we went to Xi'an, got a room in the Victory Hotel in Xi'an, which is a fantastic city. If you ever go to China, go to Xi'an, because it's got a huge wall like the China Wall around the city, ancient wall, and it's really I love Xi'an, although it's changing now, I guess. But we went to an ancient temple, a dilapidated old temple, 1,000-year-old temple, where we started. We'd hire a taxi, Bill would hire a beautiful lady. So anyway, and we went up to this temple and climbed this steep slope and went and found this ancient temple and met this beautiful man named Guan Ming. And he took us around to meet all these hermits, nuns and monks that lived in the mountains, and he knew them personally. So he became our key to meeting all these monks. And they were very glad to be met. They're very friendly. People are so friendly, it's called The Cloud Shinobi by Now, and that's one of my China photographs. And that's another one I used the China photograph for, Michael Connor's book Setting Out, about a young kid, a story of a schoolboy in Taiwan. And then this is one of my neat ones here. That's of one of the Dalmomas of, this is Green Mountain right down here, the Quelsine Range of the mountains that were going to clear cut up in the mountain. So I did a lot of ecology work in my early days. There are the trees they were going to log back in the 70s. And this was a Duckabush River. They were going to put a huge power dam down there. So I used my photography to protect some of the wilderness in the 70s here. So this is a pretty good book of a book of ecology about the Northwest and forest. And so I contributed my photographs for ecology. There's a clear cut above Shai Shai Beach in Ozette there. That was like miles of clear cut. And this is the place we were trying to protect and make part of the wilderness. That was 1973, 4, 5, and 6. And those are the trees. These trees set, if you can see, I don't know if you can see them there, but these trees are the biggest cedars on the planet. And then right beyond those trees, within a mile or something, was this clear cut. And then you looked out to the ocean, and that's what you see on the ocean, the beautiful stacks. So we actually protected this part of the wilderness with Tim McNulty, one of our poets, great poet friends around here. We worked together, a whole bunch of us together worked, Robert Sund and Tim and other people. But that's what I did when I came out here with my photography, just ecology work. I was just dedicated to it. And then the forest talked to me. It talked to me when I was out there in 1970 or so, or 1969 or 70. And Robert Sund, one of our great poets, had a cabin out there he built. And when you're out there, the forest would talk to you. And I started researching it and getting the landowner maps and finding out who owned the land. And it was all owned by logging companies and timber companies and the railroad, Milwaukee Railroad. And I went and talked to the owners of the land, like who owned those forests. Glenn Priest owned these trees, owned them. How can you own the greatest trees on the planet like that? And I went right to his place, and I asked him, what's he going to do with those trees, or when's he going to log them? Oh, 5 years. And I said, well, we just sell them to protect them.